Hello, everybody. This is Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols, and we are going to do a recap with this version of the Tactical Fitness Report. This is a recap of our periodization cycles that we were talking about in the last three or four podcasts, mainly because I think people understand what periodization is, but they've never really kind of grabbed onto the whole cycle, and because people are still running year round, they're still lifting year round. In fact, Jeff got an email the other day, said, "Hey, I've been doing 5x5 lifting workouts for 18 months and I'm not getting stronger." There's a reason for that, and we'll go into that. So I guess let's start off the question, with your email question, and I got one similar to it, almost identical, just on the endurance cycle. Guy who's been running for 18 months and not getting faster. So there you go.
And that's kind of when we make sure that as we recap some of the past podcasts that Stu and I have done, we didn't hammer home quite hard enough the why, and we want to make sure that we hammer home the why. And the big why is that there's different phases of the program because the nervous system adapts in different phases. So, there's neurological development. Think of it as your nervous system is the nerve impulse for your brain to send your muscle to contract. In the same way that you flip a light switch on and electricity travels through the wall to a light switch and the light comes on. Same idea. If you take the rubber coating off of that copper wiring, the light may come on, it may start flickering, or it may just short and pop. So think of your nervous system as the same way. It was, we want to train and get that rubber coating over those neural impulses, right? It's called myelin. And the more we do that, the better. But at some point it goes, hey, we've maxed out that energy system, that phase of movement. And so then we got to challenge the system in a little bit different way to get more myelin, get more protein coating on those neural pathways. So that's why the phases, they challenge the nervous system in a different way.
Yeah.
And when we're able to cycle those challenges in a different way, the body never really gets stagnant. It's like a stair step. It gets better, kind of starts plateauing off. It gets better as we change the phases. We don't just stay linear the whole time. And just now, even this guy doing 5x5, we can explain it mathematically, even some work equals force times distance. Because if the percentages of your work volume aren't constantly going up, okay, then we're going to have a hard time creating a more of a challenge. And now, so listen to what I said. I said work volume. Work volume, as Stu had said last time, it's not just weight, not just mass, but it's also distance and acceleration as well. We've got to manipulate. So that's where you're going, okay, wait, what does that mean? Well, that means if we manipulate just mass, that speaks more to strength. If we manipulate distance, well, we're probably going to have to bring that mass down. So that speaks more to hypertrophy. If we bring that mass down even further and we accelerate at a great rate, that's power and speed. So that's, a lot of people will stumble into this by mistake because they're like, man, I've been lifting heavy for so long. Like, you know what? We always do it. I'm just going to cut my weight way back and do a bunch of reps. Just take it easy on my joints. Well, you almost stumble into a hypertrophy phase.
Right. And your body's almost telling you to do that. Your body's almost like forcing you. Yeah, I'm burnt out with this. I got to do something else. It's almost like when you're working out again and your body is forcing you to crave healthier foods. It's like your body almost is like pulling you towards these cycles. And if you listen to it, you will see a big difference. So it doesn't really matter, what it is. And I love the way that you tie in the physics behind the physiology. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. It may not make sense to everybody, but if you just listen to your body, you may find, like Jeff just said, you will stumble into another way to produce results and still see those adaptations and growth.
Yep. And that's the thing too, is like, let's say the average person that hasn't spent a whole lot of time on the bar, let's say this person has only been training for a year and a half, 2 years maybe, and they're still trying to figure out their body a little bit and go, well, here's a very simple approach that's going to be right in this recap. Let you say, well, how long should each phase be? Right? Because I just put out a 12-week hypertrophy program. Well, does that mean that hypertrophy is always 12 weeks? No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right? I may put my strength program as an 8-week program. Does it mean it? No, it doesn't. Because at any point that you feel like, man, I'm just getting lethargic or sluggish, that's what we call deloading. We just drop everything back, right? It's just basically the body is trying to adapt. It's trying to adapt, and stress gets up here. And then you remove that stress, a lot of it, it just surges forward. It adapts. It's called super compensation.
Yep.
That's the actual term.
Yep.
So a lot of times we don't pull like the dam windows back so that water can surge. We don't get that. And it ends up happening is we actually begin to regress. We're like, man, I'm actually not only not getting stronger, I'm showing up at the gym every day, or at the track every day, or the pool every day, getting more and more lethargic. So my point is that, like, let's say you're in 6-8 weeks, you're like, man, I feel pretty good. Maybe I'm not even getting tired yet, but you know what? Hey, next week, I'm going to make a plan. Monday through Friday next week, I'm going to drop my percentages. I'm going to drop my volume, but I'm still training every day. Just make a point to do it. And you're going to find that you're just not ever really going to plateau out unless you get hurt or sick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really good. So kind of going back to the original question that you received about the guy that, has been seeing that they've been watching these podcasts. They've been reading about periodization. Like I said, if you ever write it, it comes up as a misspelled word.
Yeah.
If you tell it to Siri, it comes up as dot is Asian. I mean,
Yeah.
not many people know what this is. It's not really a word. So do some research on it, and you can find hundreds of different ways to do this. I mean, and if you think about periodization as this, if you played high school sports, let's say you played football, right? In the summer, what'd you do? You lifted weights, you did sprints, try to get stronger, try to get faster, getting healthier, getting bigger. And then you go into football season, you just try to maintain some strength and maintain your speed, get some critical specific skills to, the football playing and teamwork and all that stuff. And then afterwards it's, postseason training, rebuilding, recovery, bringing it back, and, starting in the spring again as, starting to do some, short spurts of sport specific things and coming back in. So, or you played a different sport, which might have, helped you deload as well, and you came back stronger the next year. So that's really the exact thing what this is. We're just adding kind of like an off season to the tactical athlete, because in real life, the tactical athlete has no off season. You have to create these yourselves. And it's very important to understand that. Otherwise, your job is high stress, your workouts will be high stress, and it is a downhill curve, when you start adding in work stress, life stress, workout stress, and you think you're working off the stress, but you're just getting more stressed out. So, yeah. So that's why we do it.
The thing here's and Stu hit it out of the park, and this is what I mean is that, I'm actually here in about 10 months. I'm gonna break ground a new training facility, and I'm gonna model my seasonal training the same way, exact way Stu has. So he's created this cyclic, like, seasonal shift, right? From strength emphasis, it's going to go into an endurance. It's going to get those shifts we're talking about, because when you get a group of people, tactical population that has no off season, it's best to assimilate. Say, hey, this is the program you're going to get into, and then we're going to cycle through. Now, if you're not coming to train with Stu and I, that's exactly what Stu is saying. You have to create that artificiality. And what we're also doing is saying, for those of you that are trying to get into selection, give yourself some time, build in that artificiality of a season. I mean, it's like, well, I've got a year and a half before I'm going to go to buds because I'm a junior in high school, or I'm, finishing up college, but I'm giving myself that year and a half. Okay. Start with this phase, go to the next, go to the next, go to the next, and then just repeat.
Yep.
It's exactly what you're going to do. And that way we get every one of those phases. Like, that's why I like to say, I like to get every one of those phases once or maybe twice. And then, as you know, that window of that PST is looming, a couple months away maybe. Well, then we really start focusing on, okay, I really need to get my run better. So in a 6, 8, 10, 12 week window, we can improve a run pretty substantially. Maybe not so much 6.
Right.
But 8, 10, 12 weeks, we really can start improving that, or swimming, whatever it may be. Hey, I really need to focus on my push-up development. Right? You can do that because you've then been through all the phases of strength, power, and speed, and then endurance and hypertrophy and stuff. So it's not new. We just want to make sure that, like I've had 2 this week. I had someone they asked me for a specific run program. One was like, yeah, I go to MEPS in 4 weeks. I'm like, he's like, and I was like, it doesn't work that way. He's like, no, I'll pay you whatever. And I was like, well, listen, like, it just doesn't work that way. You could be living with me, and I could be training you every day for 4 weeks. And would you improve? Yes. But to the rate of which you expect. And my response was like, you've got to put the work in. That's it.
Yeah. And it's all about foundational work. I mean, we're not talking about, you have 4 weeks to go. What you should be doing at 4 weeks to go is actually, downshifting a notch.
Yes.
And getting ready for that PST. You know what I mean? As opposed to upshifting, and, that's where people fall apart, because they have no foundation of training for a year or 2 years, or, that's why a lot of athletes do real well with this, because they have that preseason, that in season, that postseason training foundation of lifting, of running and speed and endurance. It's all part of their athletic history. That's why, when we assess people, that's one of the first questions we ask. How much time you giving yourself, and what'd you do for the last 2 years?
Yep, exactly. It says a lot. It says a lot about what they've developed as athletes. And, that's the big thing, is like, even had somebody on the flip side, maybe this person didn't find Stu and I's page up until only last week. So he's like, holy crap, I'm at crunch time. I only got 4 weeks. Whereas on the other side, one of the first people that messaged me about my program was last February. And he's been messaging me more than anybody else. And he was like, oh, I got 10 weeks. And then he's like, he messaged me again. He's like, oh, I'm 6 weeks out from MEPS. I really need to start working on my running. Can you write me a specific program? And I scrolled through, and I was like, last February you asked me. I was like, what the fuck have you been doing? That was my response. And I was like, I'm done. If you haven't improved your run since last February, based off of the hundreds, and I mean, he has messaged me hundreds of times, and
think how many hundreds of days there are of training.
Yeah,
that he just missed out on. Yeah.
So over a year, and he's now like, oh, I go to MEPS in 4 weeks. I need to bring my run time down from 11 minutes to like 8.5.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it doesn't work that way. Like, what have you been doing?
Right.
So it's, anyways, off my soapbox. So back on track a little bit. And that's what we just want to make sure you guys, if there's, like I said before, if there's no takeaways, the one takeaway that I want you to have is that if you feel like you're stagnant in the program that you're doing, whatever program you're doing, mine included, take a break, right? Switch it a little bit. Like, just switch the phase a little bit away from what you've been doing. Okay. And then before that, just understand that there should be phases.
Yeah.
Okay. There should be.
And think about it this way. Your athletic foundation should consist of the following phases. And this might be a good segue for us too. You got strength, you have power, you have speed, you have endurance, you have agility.
some strength endurance plugged
Yep.
in there at some
Yep.
point too.
Yeah, you got combo, you got some little hybrid training in there. But you also have some flexibility and mobility work to do, because that's going to help you recover. It's going to help you cool down. It's going to help you perform better. So maybe we should talk about how, one, we have these cycles. It's a strength cycle. It's a endurance cycle. It's a speed cycle, an acceleration cycle. But, where does stretching fit in there? Because I know that was a pretty common question too. Static stretching or dynamic stretching, before or after?
Yeah, and the question, and our resounding question or answer is
it depends. Yes.
Okay. And so here's the thing with stretching. I want you to put this in your brain a little bit, because this is my approach. If you take a barbell and you put it in your hands and you're laying on your back and you begin your bench press, this is just an example. What is that? That is a static. At some points there's a static stretch, and some points could be it's
dynamic
stretching.
Yeah.
That's what when you go to touch your toes, you are trying to stretch the fascia while it's under tension, right? That's what's happening. So that is why Stu and I put so much emphasis on full range of motion, movement patterns with weights. And then when we're able to do that, I'm not saying, again, we should go beyond, right? Really stretching and creating some sort of laxity, but the push-up should be executed in a full range of motion.
Yes.
It's capable for the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, okay? Pull-ups is full range. That's why we say half reps don't make, 3 half reps never make up for any full range of motion reps. People's like, I have a hard time squatting. It's not about the back squat. It's just you probably haven't exhibited that movement pattern, even without load. Right. And so then when you put load, even albeit very like a rucksack, you're going to have a hard time squatting that movement pattern. So that's the thing, is like, I'm a big fan of stretching. It's like the word supplements. I eat a lot of whole meals and I supplement my meals. I like to add the stretching and the mobility work as a supplement to my gross motor movements under load.
Right.
So that's where I start. I go, okay, if I'm going to do power work, I'm going to work my way up to some speed stretching, some dynamic stretching. And we'll talk about the recovery side piece, but that's kind of what I look at. I go, okay, well, what phase am I in? Okay. Do I need to move myself or the bar or the dumbbell fast? Right. I might start out with stretching, slow static stuff, but not much, because the reason, again, Stu and I talked about this off camera, is there's a substantial amount of research that says static stretching before power movements will impede neural pathway, neurotransmission of speed, right? Like a really slow static stretch slows you down, right? You don't see Olympic sprinters before they get in the blocks to like hang out and stretch. You might see them stretch, but you can see them bounce and pop.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they're doing very dynamic stretching movements.
Yeah, that's why you see them jump a lot. You see them jump, and they'll throw their legs up and kick.
Yeah, a lot of leg swings, butt kickers. Yeah, all those.
Exactly. They're trying to speed up those neural movements, and so now I'll let Stu kick off. Let's anything to touch kind of on the
well kind of carry off where you were going with that one is, when I see a sprinter, if you think about what they're doing, they are flexing one set of muscles to stretch another set of muscles. Yeah. And that's a legitimate athletic movement. When you bend over and touch your toes, you're flexing the front side of your torso to stretch the back side of your torso. Butt kickers, you're flexing the hamstring, but you're stretching your thigh, when you're taking your heel to your rump, so it has all different, types of you are stretching at that time, but it's just a little more dynamic. So a static stretch and a dynamic stretch, static stretch, grab your foot, take your heel to your butt. You are statically stretching your thigh. You do a butt kicker, you are dynamically stretching your thigh, and it just looks more like running, basically. So that's a good primer to doing runs. It's a good primer to doing some leg weighted exercise or even calisthenic exercises, especially sprinting. The one thing I see a lot is people are understretched or under warmed up, I should say, probably better, is, when they go do sprints, especially as you age. If you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you just sprint like you used to when you're 18, cold, bing, you're going to pop a hamstring. I've seen it so many times, even experienced it myself, so I know it. And I thought I was warmed up, but I wasn't, So anyway, so here's one of my favorite warm-ups I like to do. In fact, we do it just about every morning. We have this indoor basketball court, and on one end, we do an exercise like a push-up. And on the other end, we may do a squat if we're going to do a full body day type day, or maybe we're going to do some running a little bit after this workout. So we'll do one push-up, one squat. Then we'll go run back and we'll do 2 push-ups, 2 squats, 3 push-ups, 3 squats. And, in between that is a series of dynamic stretches. So we're doing butt kickers going down. We're doing Frankenstein walks coming back. We're doing bounding coming down, or we're walking backwards or running backwards or sideways, or, all those little drills that just get the feet and blood moving and, just get your synapses ready to go do workouts, as opposed to just going out and doing it, getting under a bench or just going running cold. It just is a better way to warm yourself up. So.
Yeah. And that same thing is like, let's just say, hey, I don't have a gym. Well, before I run, what I do is I just start walking.
Yeah.
And then I go into a shallow lunge. And then I go into deep lunges as I'm just moving forward. Right. And then I might go into a split squat, jump, land, then walk it out. Right. I'm going to do basically how you go, hands to toes, walk my hands out, then walk my feet back up to my hands. Right. All those sort of things. And you just incorporate that into your training. And the same thing is like, this is not a definitive answer until you can feel what you're doing. The definitive answer is like in a resistance environment, people say, well, how many warm-up sets? Well, until you're warm. Like, what does warm mean? Warm doesn't necessarily mean hot and sweaty, because hot and sweaty doesn't necessarily mean fine motor movement patterns have improved. But if you really, really focus, and Stu's already said it, when you stretch, you should be thinking contract, relax, your agonist, antagonist. You shouldn't just be like limp. Now, there's a point in time where, like, especially you're stretching your back, where, we want to get limp and certain other things in rotational. But it's like if I'm stretching, like if I'm standing up and I reach back and I grab my quad or grab my ankle and I stretch my quad, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flex my glute on the other side and reach.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to take something, because it's called PNF, proprio neuromuscular facilitation. When you contract one side of the muscle, okay, it forces the other side to relax. Okay, it's a neurological thing. And so what we're trying to do is be an active participant when you're stretching. Don't just stretch and assume that it's happening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably the best example of your PNF stretching would be, and you've probably done this if you were an athlete, in high school or college, where you're on your back and your partner has your foot and he's just slowly pushing it back. You're stretching your hamstring, and then your coach says, push against his hand, right? And you're pushing against the hand, and he's just trying to fight you doing that. And then you relax, and then you find that you can go back a little bit further. Yeah. Right. So that is a good example of a PNF stretch. So it's
And the best thing to do, ladies and gentlemen, above all else, when it comes to stretching, don't hold your breath. That's the big thing. You're like, you fight, and all of a sudden you go. That's another. You're creating a PNF through your diaphragmatic breathing, and so that's the other side. So take your time. If it feels, there's the things that feels good. That's good. Okay. If it hurts a little bit, also kind of good. If it really hurts,
stop.
We don't need to be there, but breathe. Don't hold your breath. Okay. So that's my take on stretching, kind of the summary of it. And it's, if if your movement patterns that you're going to exhibit in your training, you can lump those into your warm-up and stretching, then do that.
Yes, absolutely. Especially if you're doing squats or lunges, deadlift movements, bench press. I mean, push-ups and bench press. I always have warmed up for my bench press with push-ups first.
I do parallel. I have the parallettes.
Yep.
Like the little, they're like, I guess they're about 18 inches. They're 9 inches off the ground. I really like to get in there and dive and stretch, and then go like basically butt in the air, put my biceps by my ears, stretch it. I stretch out my calves and hamstrings when I do it.
Oh yeah.
I go back down. I basically do dive bombers from Buds. Remember?
Yep, absolutely.
That's basically what I do.
Yeah, we do 10 jumping jacks, do a toe touch, walk yourself out into a down dog.
Yep.
Then walk yourself into a push-up, 10 push-ups, then walk yourself back, 10 jumping jacks again. Do that like 3 or 4 times. And you pause, just feel all the different stretches that's available for you, from your calves all the way up to your upper back and chest. And so that's one I like to do for bench. For squats, I like to do my little pyramid, go back and forth 1 to 10. That's 55 squats. And they're all calisthenic squats with some running in between. I just find that is a really good way for me to kind of get the blood flowing and do squats. And then you go deeper and deeper and deeper each time you do these squats. I was a former catcher in baseball, so me getting down in that catching position, flat-footed, that's kind of my go-to movement. Just to get there, and then I'm ready to do the squat workout. And sometimes, in between sets, nothing wrong with doing a few stretches. May not want to go too hard on the static stretches, especially if you're trying to do a 1-rep max or something like that. But some more dynamic type stretching, is good in between. Just keep the blood flowing.
I like to do like just a regular bench or some elevation box. I'll throw my foot up on it.
Yep.
So basically, I'm in a front deep left hip flexion. And I do the whole yoga warrior pose. I rotate away from it. I do both those because, again, for me, it's like I'm really trying to actually open up my hips the best I can without throwing them open.
Yes.
I put them in a split, right? A bilateral.
That's a great one. I love that one. Yep.
And then rotate, right? But you can't just throw yourself like you're swinging a bat. I try to flex myself, and I rotate through a lot of that. And that just the hips, then they can settle.
Yep. But once again, a dynamic stretch. It is as close to a static stretch, but you're dynamically getting into that position.
Yeah.
So,
and just the biggest thing I can say is that stretching is also a way for my mind, for me to assess how I'm feeling.
Yes.
Like that's a big thing. It's like, that's why I take my time. Now there's certain things like, hey, let's say you got to get in and get out. Let's say you only got 20 minutes. We'll make sure that the exercises that you pick aren't going to be high nervous system demand. Like if you only have 25 minutes, you probably shouldn't do heavy back squats that day or high volume back squats.
Yeah.
So make sure that your time that's allotted allows for stretching, the training, and then Stu and I are now going to just jump in and kind of finalize here with our cool down. So I'll let Stu, I know Stu has already mentioned, especially some of his training he does and transitions in the pool and stuff for his cool down. But again, the cool down is multifaceted. It's not just cool the core temperature down or whatever it is. There's reasons for that cool down.
Yeah. I mean, mainly reason why we like to swim last is, one, it makes a great cool down for us. We actually do decrease our body temperature to a point where we're like, half of fatigue is body heat, if you ask me. And if I can drop my temperature down a little bit, I get this second wind. And then I'm changing energy systems as well, going into more of a, focused, longer endurance stuff. Now we could even do sprints in the pool if we wanted to, but that decreased, body temperature helps us to get that second wind for a little bit, but we usually don't last very long with the sprints in the pool. So we tend to go to the longer endurance, more treading work and technique work. Because I would say that there's 2 things in the pool that we consider part of our cool down, and that is technique training, right? And the actual swimming itself, is a cool down to what we just did. Cause we'll spend the previous hour and 15 minutes, calisthenics, lifting, running, maybe a ruck in there, depending on the day, and then we take it into the next phase, and usually 30, 45 minutes, we're in there depending on how much time everybody has, just mixing in that cool down phase. And I tell you what, it works really well as far as leaving that workout after 2 hours of working out and not feeling like crap. I haven't I might have burned out all my glycogen from the previous hour, but I've kind of transitioned, and I'm more into this, fat burning mode now from, a lower intensity, lower body temperature phase of training, so.
Yeah. And I guess I didn't mean to gloss over it, but the word that comes up all the time is mobility.
Yeah.
We've already talked about it. We just hadn't defined it.
Right.
So mobility is exactly what we're talking about. Demonstrating full range of motion, depending on that person, under resistance, while still maintaining stability and flexibility. Mobility is this big umbrella that's very hard to define. It's like trying to define fitness or define recovery.
Yeah.
It became difficult, but just think of, there is this push to improve mobility in the world of Instagram and Facebook and literature. So before I add specific mobility movements, what I do is I try to achieve proper mobility in range of motion in an actual movement, like for back squat. Before I start putting stuff in there to improve my back squat, first thing I do is I just, if I'm even holding something like the vertical on a squat rack, I'm going to hold that and get myself down in that catcher's position. I can hang out there for a minute and stretch and lean and work to my ankles. I'm going to flex my tibialis anterior to pull my heels down, not just compensate and rotate.
Right.
So that I take my mobility is my movement.
Yes.
That's what mobility is. It's proper movement. So
yeah,
take your time, get, then if you're like, man, I'm really, this left ankle is not flexible at all. Right. Cause we oftentimes confuse the two. Well, my mobility is bad. No. Your flexibility is really bad in your ankle, but the mobility everywhere else is pretty good, except for you're compensating on your other side to compensate that left ankle inflexibility.
Right.
So just know that there's a difference.
Okay? Yeah. Something that Jeff just said that makes so much sense too. And we do this is, whatever you are doing, it's going to require mobility. Okay. If you're running, it requires swimming, requires mobility, squatting, deadlift, all of those require mobility. Treading water requires mobility. So that's one of, especially when we get into the pool, we are doing those movements as part of our mobility training, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. So, because what we're trying to avoid when we're talking mobility, why? Like, here's the why. Why mobility? Why are we talking it? Because what we're trying to prevent is inefficient compensation movement patterns, right? If you have a really tight right ankle, you're probably going to end up with a tight left hip and a sore right shoulder, because you create these compensations over distance and time as the result of something. Maybe it was an acute injury. Maybe you slept on it wrong. Like we've all experienced, slept on my shoulder wrong. Like, God darn, my arm it just doesn't feel like I can get overhead because it's pissed. What it's done is it's gone into spasm. Now we have compensation. So we've got to improve that compensation so we can exhibit proper mobility. We're just trying to eliminate or minimize compensation patterns that are not efficient. Okay. Yeah. Because there are, a compensation pattern that's really efficient is get stronger. It's a compensation for stress, but we're just talking about movement patterns now.
Right. And that's one reason why I like to go into the pool and finish off a hard workout with another hard workout. But, we tend to start off with treading water. We'll tread water with our hands out of the water, working our hips and knees and ankles. We'll start off with little flutter kicks, and we'll go into scissor kicks, and we'll go into breaststroke kicks, egg beater kicks, dolphin kicks if you really want to practice drowning. Because that's really hard, especially doing it with no hands. And then we'll do a cycle with just hands. All right, so we're not using our legs at all. So it's working our shoulders. Another one I like to do, especially after hard upper body days, is just jumping jacks in like an 8-foot deep pool. So you actually put yourself up to here, right? You get yourself down to the bottom, by just lifting your hands up, and that's going to pull you down to the bottom, and then you pull yourself back down, or you pull your hands down, and that shoots you back to the top. So you're just kind of like doing these little upper body jumping jacks in an 8-foot pool. Great for the shoulders, really loosens up the shoulders a little bit, especially if you've been doing a lot of push-ups and you're, a lot of bench type work, shoulder work, things like that. So, once again, shoulder, knee, lower back, ankles, all of those are going to be points that you have to see and feel throughout your normal workout, and then realize I need to add in some mobility time working in this. And like I said, it can be nothing more than just some slower push-ups, or it can be a slower non-weighted squat, or a real deep, perfect lunge. All of those are great examples of taking a current exercise that's written in your strength training program and just turning it into a mobility section for a set, if that's what you feel you need.
Because you get finished with most training sessions, and you've got the blood you got the pump, your muscles are full. And so we've started limiting some of our natural range of motion because of that state of fatigue that we've put ourselves in. So if we take that minute to get into water, we've removed some of the gravity, not literally, but mathematically, we have a little bit kind of, I know it's still 9 meters per second squared in the water, but it just changes because of density of water. But now also, like saying, like getting that push up, let's say you did chest, we did a lot of bench press, a lot of this, a lot of these presses, and your chest is full of blood, and just take that minute to get in that push up position, because the body's load isn't so great that you're really risking any injury, but it's an opportunity for your body, your nervous system to go, okay, let's get that full range of motion back whilst it's completely full of blood. It's basically a very, very specific form of PNF. It's really what we're talking about.
Yeah. And the freestyle is a great example of that. I mean, just swimming a few laps freestyle in that state of a big upper body pump, I tell you what, it's like your arms don't even want to work, when you're in that zone. And it takes a couple laps, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm feeling a whole lot better now, and it's just, like I said, it's part of the recovery cycle. And it starts off, you're changing energy systems, and you're just going to go right into that recovery cycle afterwards. Get your food, get your rest, and then you're ready to roll the next day. So
and just my last piece is, know this, ladies and gentlemen, if to the best of our ability, every rep and set that we complete at full range of motion, given that exercise, that movement that we're trying to exhibit, the less mobility, flexibility, and stability work we're going to have to do on the backside.
Yeah.
Because if all of your reps and sets are efficient and are exhibiting those full range of motion, you're never really tightening up as much as you would if we half rep everything and you're walking around the gym with air lats. Okay? It doesn't work so well.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for that. I'm not knocking that. There's a time and place for that, especially in a hypertrophy world. But efficient movement does the two most important things in my mind in the tactical population. It makes you fatigue resistant, and it makes you injury resistant.
Yes.
Those are my two favorite things to say, this is why we need to do it. Because if you're both of those things, we can drive volume up, we can drive intensity up, and we can do our job with minimizing, to the best of our ability, non-contact related injury. That's our entire scope of our practice.
Yes. Yeah, that's really good. That's a good way to recap this. And like I said, we thought about doing a just a separate stretch and mobility one. But I said, you know what? It really kind of goes with the cycles, because we just recapped the periodization phases, right? But we just added in, don't forget your stretching and mobility throughout the process.
Yep.
Right. I mean, you can take a day, and nothing wrong with taking 10 minutes at the end of the day and doing some stretching. Your back, will probably thank you for it in the morning when you wake up. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a separate supplement, like Jeff says. He likes to supplement things, and that's a way to supplement adding some flexibility to your day. But you can also make it part of your training as well, every single rep. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a 6-hour. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. I'm at Sornex headquarters here. I'm gonna head there after lunch. And so my point is that I had a 6-hour drive, 6.5-hour drive yesterday. My back needs to get more mobile right now. Before I trained it this afternoon, I'm gonna spend X amount of minutes, I don't know, until I know that my body is in a position to move that weight. So that's what I'm gonna be doing here today, because if I don't, I'll lose training days.
Yeah, I had the same thing. I just drove down to Florida, 12 hours.
You won.
12-hour drive. But I did it. I broke it. Going down there, I broke it up in half. I stopped off at Florence, South Carolina, where I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. And I have to give them a shout out, because I walk into that weight room and there's two things that I love the most after driving for 6 hours. I saw an elliptical and I saw a foam roller in there. Now, I brought my own foam roller with me too, but that foam roller sitting there in the weight room, I was like, I'm all over this. And there's a little treading pool over there. I mean, I call it a treading pool, a hotel pool that, is about 10 yards getting across. But so I just went in there and treaded in it for 30 minutes and perfect. So anyway, did that drive. And yesterday I did a whole 12 hours coming back straight through, and that sucked. And this morning I created a workout to where it was some little dynamic stretching at the beginning, some non-impact cardio in the middle with some foam rolling intermixed throughout the whole thing, and then swimming with some treading. And that helped a lot. But I'm still stiff. Like, I'm sitting in this chair right now doing this, ready to not sit down anymore. I mean, it's just,
same here. My knees and stuff keep popping, and I'm ready to get moving for sure.
Yes.
It's just locomotion is lubrication. I've been sitting too damn much. So
yes, agreed. Same.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So, got anything else?
No, I think that's my last 2 cents is evaluate what you guys are doing, to include the programs that Stu and I have you guys on. If you're stagnant, make a change, and then pick up where you left off.
Yeah. And listen to the body. Listen to your body too, because it may tell you, you know what, today's my heavy day, but I'm just not feeling it. Maybe I'll go light. Maybe I'll just do calisthenics, do the same movements.
Yep.
Other than just do calisthenics, or maybe dumbbells, with 25% of the weight, whatever, sometimes your body's going to tell you exactly what you need, and, try to make sure that there's a fine line between your body talking to you and your mind saying, you're just being weak. You just need to work harder, so try not to confuse the two. Sometimes when you're truly lethargic, just listen to your body. So it's going to take some practice, and you know what? It's going to be some trial and error. You're going to push through those days, some days, and you're going to feel worse, right? And you're going to pull back, and, you're going to feel better. I think it takes some practice learning that, because I'm not teaching it to you because, it's something that I read. I'm teaching it to you because I've done it. I've pushed through those days when I felt like crap and probably should have just, pulled back and stretched, right? And I pushed through those, and I got worse, or I hurt myself. And then I was out for 4 weeks because I couldn't do that lift anymore because I jacked up my shoulder. So
that's where Stu's is my thing is that Stu's right on, is that the big red flag for me is a training program that says push, 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 all gas, no break. because what is all gas and no brakes is buds and SFAS and PJ school and SWAT school. It's all gas. You need to train your brakes. Okay. So think of it, a Ferrari, huge engine, but it's got equally powerful brakes. Okay. When you get it, over a calendar year, if you listen to your body and you have no unscheduled days off, boom, right? If you train and grind, now we're getting so much diminishing return that even our training is crap. And we might get a lot of missed training days, or we just get a lot of training days that are suboptimal. The fewer suboptimal training days that you have, the greater the adaptation. Okay. Yeah. And that's the trick. And that's where the stretching and mobility and all this stuff comes in. It's a way for us to self-assess how we're feeling, how we're moving.
Yeah. You know what? That's a good point, because the one thing that I know when I am overtraining, and I don't know where it is for you, Jeff, but for me, it is my hips. If my hips hurt, I am overtraining somewhere, whether it's heavy weightlifting with squats and deadlifts, or it's high mileage running. It doesn't matter which phase I'm in. If my hips are hurting, I am overtraining somewhere, and I'm going to slowly start seeing those diminishing returns if I keep doing that. And that's where I came up with the idea about 5 years ago of just in the middle of my week, I'm throwing a mobility day in there. And it's just to recap it. I know we've recapped several times here. It's a non-impact cardio day mixed with foam rolling every 5 minutes. That's all it is. And it's wonderful, and treading, so that has saved me. And I can tell you, it has turned my hips from aching and feeling old and painful to feeling no pain ever, by just listening to that little place in your body where something's not quite right and your workouts aren't quite to where you were. There's somewhere it's going to be triggered. For me, it's my hips.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Yeah, the same. Little stuff makes a big difference.
All right, Jeff, we kind of beat this one up, but hope you guys liked it, and hope you send us an email and let us know what to talk about next.
Deal. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, we'll see you.